Ayan mga kameta, katulad ng sinabi natin, napanood natin yung movie, medyo matagal naman siya, yung Oras de Peligro. I think roughly 2 hours. Yeah, 1 hour and 45 minutes. Not as long as I thought, but long enough dahil marami pong yung kina-cover nung movie na yan. Of course, later on, kailangan natin ng proper breakdown ng movie yan. Especially later on kung kailangan natin i-juxtapose ito dun sa yung kabilang version ng reality, no? Yung Marites version of reality. Bago tayo pupunta sa Marites version of reality, pag-usapan natin ng konti mga kameta itong Oras de Peligro na yan, no? Now, first of all, one of the things that you realize with this movie is that clearly walang golden era ng time na yan. Kasi makikita mo talaga yung karanasan ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino, andun yung mga slum areas, andun yung mga desperation and poverty, andun yung makita mo talaga yung kahirapan ng mga Pinoy ng panahon na yan. So, one of the first thing it does is that it dispels all of these nonsensical myths about the Philippines supposedly being a Singapore of Asia or I don't know, Japan of Asia, blah, 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 blah. So, dun makikita mo talaga na pinakita yung totoo talaga na yeah, karamihan, vast majority of mga Filipinos talaga. We're living in very difficult conditions, no? So doon papasok yung focus on the personal stories and vignettes na meron sa movie. So, for instance, again, ayoko spoiler alert. Of course, there are parts that show about the desperate situation that forced some people to, get into certain exploitative relationships. Hindi na ako mag-spoiler. Desperate conditions that was forcing certain people to even step over their convictions para magkaroon lang ng trabaho. And then makikita mo talaga yung mga kotse, yung mga kalsada, makikita mo talaga yung alam mo yung pananamit ng tao, makikita mo talaga talagang hirap na hirap ng Pilipinas ng time na yan. Which is exactly what was the case because by 1981, 1982, and definitely by 1983, talagang baksak na yung economy ng Philippines noong time na yan. And the Philippines was one of the poorest countries in Asia and in the world by that time. So, that's just the fact, no? So, clearly makikita mo na towards the end of the dictatorship, vast majority of the Filipinos were living in very, very difficult conditions. Desperate conditions, and the country was almost falling apart. At the same time, one thing na appreciate ko sa movie niyan is hindi siya yung typical na quote-unquote dilaw na movie, no? Actually, if you could see in the movie na may more than hindi lang subtle medyo more than subtle critique, no, ng the whole like dilaw version of things, no? I mean, I'm sure Joel Laman has his own thing to say about this. So while this movie was not as activista level ng Katips, no? Kasi yung Katips talaga was really a story of mga aktivista nung panahon ni Marcos, no? At yung mga naranasan nila. This was not necessarily that. May human story, may personal stories. But there's again, spoiler alert. There's a part there, again, I'm making sure na hindi ma-spoiler, but there's a part there where pinapakita yung mga mayayaman na Filipino who supported the revolution. And you could see that, they were kind-hearted, they loved the people, they wanted freedom and democracy for the Philippines. But at the same time, you could still see how yung feudal, no, yung feudal na yung sistema ng Pilipinas, yung feudal system, no, ay naka-superimpose dito sa shifting political system. So on one hand, makita mo, the Philippines was in the midst of a political transformation, if not a revolution. But at the same time, makikita mo talaga yung feudal system natin, no? At saka yung mga class divides natin andun pa rin. Obviously, dun sa movie, I think Joel Laman tried to show na the class divide was not as intense, but there are also certain conversations there by more activist elements, progressive elements, who have their own doubts. Na sa isang banda, of course, masaya sila na pabaksak na yung dictatorship, but at the same time, they also had their doubts about whether magkakaroon ng tunay na revolution. So, I appreciate it. I don't want to say more because baka mga spoiler na yan, but I appreciate the fact na the class divides, the feudalistic social system, those things were reflected, and how those things will, of course, endure even after the fall of the Marcos dictatorship. The other thing that I also appreciated the movie about is the extensive usage of historical archives at saka yung mga footages, actual footages dun sa nangyari. Hindi yung mga made in Marites version of footages, like real footages of unang-una yung intensity at emotion ng EDSA, yung intensity at emotion ng mga tao, yung anger ng mga tao dun sa bankrupt dictatorship, at yung excitement ng tao na paalis na yung isang bankrupt system, and at the same time yung galit din ng tao dun sa galit ng tao sa mga karahasan ng gobyerno, no? Especially dun sa Metrocom, no? Yung police forces. So dito mo rin makikita sa movie na yan, no? Na a lot of problems we have today with EJK, with lack of rule of law, with corruption in the law enforcement, among law enforcement, malalim ang roots nito, at makikita mo a lot of that. Yung ugat nito ay mababalik din. You can trace it back all the way dun sa panahon ng dictatorship. So I kind of appreciate that there was this effort to capture the raw emotion of the moment, no? Because to be honest, kung binasa mo sa libro lang yan, or, I mean, I have 100% respect for books. Books are extremely important. This is something I do, right? But at the same time, you want to also capture the emotions, and especially for people like me who more did the reading than watching the documentaries, to see those documentary footages allowed me to put emotions to the words that I read in the books. No? So that was very, very important. Kasi, grabe, talagang makikita mo talaga, we were on the verge of a true revolution. Now, pwede natin pag-usapan whether a revolution actually happened afterwards or it was just a change of the elite faction in charge of the Philippine state. But at least, that was captured there. I also appreciated the fact na, at least to a certain degree, of course, I would have loved to have, a whole different movie or even more focused on this, how there was a clear division or cracks within the elite leadership, especially nung bumaliktad na si Enrile. Very interesting. Dapat tignan niyo talaga si Enrile and the things he was saying against Marcos and all, and how he should not follow him. And also Ramos, no? So I think there's a part there that, of course, discusses what really triggered the actual, the actual wave that really swept out of existence yung Marcos dictatorship. Obviously, the Aquino assassination set in motion, a whole series of events that will culminate in EDSA. But the EDSA itself was really triggered in many ways after yung coup attempt nila Ramos and Enrile. It was a failed coup attempt in a certain way. It was failed from a tactical, operational standpoint, but it was a success from a political standpoint, precisely because it convinced America to withdraw support from the Marcoses, although they will take them all the way to Hawaii. But at least it brought many people on the streets. Cardinal Sin and the Catholic hierarchy will also come in. So by this time, clearly, bumaliktad lahat dun sa dictatorship niya. So yan, appreciate natin yan. Ayun naman. So that's the other thing that I appreciated about the movie. And then, of course, the acting was fantastic. Of course, yung lead actress, the way makikita mo yung transition niya from someone who didn't care about politics, from someone who didn't care about politics, from someone who was just caring about their own family and all, and then later on makikita mo ma-radicalize yung mga tao. And they really say, yung mga walang pake sa politika, magkakaroon ng pake sa politika when they see how an oppressive system affects them at the most personal level, in this movie at the most tragically personal level, no? So I also like that arc, no? Yung arc kung saan even apolitical people or politically passive people will eventually be swept by the revolutionary zeitgeist, no? So na-appreciate ko yan, mga kameta. So those are at least ito yung mga initial reaction natin. I'll go deeper into this later on. I-breakdown natin overall in terms of the script, in terms of comparison with Katips, with hindi ko pa napanood rin yung Ako Si Ninoy, but with also other movies, tignan natin comparison. Let's also see what Joel Lamangan wanted to do, and let's see how successful he was in terms of executing what he was setting himself to do. Let's also see in terms of reaction. Sadly, I didn't see many people in the cinema. No, so that just tells you how low the level of interest of people is, perhaps in the entire genre. So maybe if you check ko yung kabila, yung Marites, mas maraming tao manood ng Marites. But I think sadly, the level of investment, of sense of investment of people in history, in truth, in historical accuracy, and we're not talking about revolution, mga kameta, 150, 230, and 300 years ago. I mean, I think the French show more emotional investment probably in their revolution in 1789 than some of us here in the revolution in 1986, diba? Or something like that. So that's really worrying. But bakit dahil nasa solid north ako? I don't know. You tell me. You tell me about this. But it really disheartens. I mean, masakit to see that you don't see people as much invested in these things, because, as I said, if you're a country that doesn't have a sense of your own, even contemporary history, yung revolution nangyari just 30 years ago or so, then I don't know what's gonna happen to our country in the next 30, 40, 50 years. And dito makikita talaga, the sense of investment in truth and historical accuracy, it's something that really we have to work on. And this is where you see how deep, guys, yung problema ng ating education crisis. Our education crisis is very, very, very deep. Because if we really had a decent education system, no? Forget about excellent, decent education system, we would have had greater collective resilience and immunity against fake news, disinformation, but also greater sense of investment in bothering to just understand what on earth happened to our own history, where we went wrong, so that we know how we can get things right. At yun ang mga problema natin, mga kameta. Ito, nagre-real talk na ako. Itong problema natin, mga kameta, the reason why hindi natin naintindihan anong solusyon sa mga problema natin, ano yung mga kailangan natin gawin dun sa ating mga suliranin. The reason why many folks are not sure about how to choose the best leaders. The reason why many folks easily, get swayed by or enamored by charlatans, right? The reason why both our dictators and not so dictators ended up incompetent, all of that in one way or another, mga kameta, can be traced back to the fundamental problem, which is we don't have an education system that helps us to appreciate and understand what is good governance, what is good leadership, and also more specifically sa ating bansa, where we went wrong. Because kung hindi natin matanggap where we went wrong, how can we figure out who are the right people that we should vote for the future? How can we figure out who should face justice and who should get credit for the good things that happen in our country? Yun talaga yung medyo problema natin, mga kameta. And as I speak this, I'm seeing this, talagang beautiful sunset here. Medyo maging emotional tayo, lalay. I never saw a sunset like this. 1 second, mga kameta. Pwede ko i-reverse to. I think pwede ko i-reverse to, no? I mean, look at that. Look at that sunset. Oh my goodness, look at that. Sorry mga kameta, I have to take a picture of this. Grabe yung sunset na yan. Kanina, ang taas niya kasi. Yeah, I mean, while we're watching the sunset, gusto ko talaga balikan yan eh. I'm really worried about our country kasi if we don't feel any sense of investment in history, in historical accuracy, if we don't really feel any sense of investment about learning about saan tayo nagkamali, sino mga may kasalanan more than anyone. Of course, walang innocent. All of our leaders in one way or another nagkakulang kaya nandito tayo, di ba? But if we cannot distinguish between bad and the good and the ugly, talagang malabo to. And if you were just gonna care about what's happening today, with vague ideas of the future, without understanding what was happening just 30, 40, 50 years ago, then I really have a hard time figuring out how we can bring the country together. I mean, I agree with President Marcos Jr. that we have to have unity, of course, and I believe in reconciliation, of course, but it has to be unity and reconciliation based on truth. It has to be unity and reconciliation based on a proper appreciation of how we went wrong, where we went wrong, who was most responsible for these things, and how we should move forward. Yun talaga. And guys, I mean, talaga dito ako talaga worried. I mean, Of course, dun sa mga crowds natin sa academic world, in my world, UP world, or I don't know, or sa atin mga kameta, of course, it's easy to find, thankfully, it's easy to find people who care about history and all of that. But an education system is not about reading just 10, 20, 30, or 50 brilliant people. It's about inculcating a profound sense of appreciation of history and also a basic understanding of good governance, competent governance, not for 50, 100, 1,000, 50,000 people. No, for 50 million people, for 100 million people. At dito talaga mga kameta, I think there's some serious problem that and talagang and especially now mga kameta na we're gonna move towards, especially now mga kameta, we're moving towards an era of deep fake. Ito, nakakatakot yung deep fake technology can easily, create all sorts of super realistic looking nonsense look true in an era of ChatGPT where you can easily have super propaganda stuff written so easily. In this era of hyper disinformation, talagang grabe, di ba? But mga kameta, the more I also think about this, the more I also appreciate the effort. Shout out natin mga kasama natin sila Xiao Chua, si JC Punong Bayan who released this new book. It's a passionate book about the false nostalgia. A lot of our good friends, unfortunately not in, hopefully more of them will see, diba? I mean, all of these good friends are doing really their best to make people more interested in history and appreciate it. Kasi, pansin ko ganito mga kameta, pag cultural, like food, mga ganon, it is obviously much easier. My money? Saan? Oops, it's falling? Oh, thank you very much. Very kind of you. Oh, here pala. Thank you. Oh, yan naman gusto ko sa mga kababayan ko dito sa Baguio, sa mga Ilocos. Nahulog yung pera ko. Hinabol pa ako ng bata. Para hindi mahulog yung bata. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really, bait naman yan. Ito mga kapatid. So, I appreciate ko yung mga effort nila, di ba? Ako naman kasi, I mean, alam nyo naman, my really primary specialty expertise is really foreign policy and all. And of course, way before I became a vlogger, way before I started becoming a, what do you call it, political analyst, whatever. I was really a foreign policy guy, and mostly abroad ako nagsusulat. You can imagine all the biggest outlets on earth nagsulat na tayo dyan, and I'm really proud of that and all. But since last year, so mas of course active tayo, reaching out, and the more we reach out, the more realize how deep, profound the problem is. It's really deep. It's really profound, So. Pansin ko, if you talk about culture or basketball or food and all, it's not too hard to get people invested. But when you talk about, it's not even politics. It's just, my goodness, diba? Parang, don't say there's no rain when there's clearly rain, diba? And people who got wet with the rain are in front of you and yet you're denying that there was a rain, diba? I mean, ano mangyari sa atin, diba? Now, at the same time, of course, we want a balanced sense of history. Not in, because ayaw rin natin yung, ganito kasi, I also don't like that history of pure black and white, kung saan, angel yung isang side and evil yung isang side. No, the reality is that it's 50 shades of gray, and some side are really, really responsible for a lot of kaiwanan and kapalpakan nangyari. And this is where I think I don't make a lot of friends, because I also blame, I think justifiably, a lot of people who had the power to really bring about transformational change in the Philippines, but they didn't. And I'm talking about what happened from the revolutionary moment onwards. I mean, my sense is if Ninoy were the president, Ninoy had taken over after Marcos, I think he had the audacity, he had the political charisma, and also the enlightened vision, to really push for not only changing yung mga nandun lang sa gobyerno, but changing the whole political system, but more than that, even changing the socio-economic system that has created so much oppression and inequality in our country. I mean, I'm so glad to see more and more middle-class Filipinos, more and more people, capable of, more and more people with disposable income. I'm happy about that. But let's be honest, mga kameta, a lot of this new wealth that is coming to our country is because dun sa, it's because of the sacrifices ng ating mga, ating mga kababayan ng OFWs, among others, so remittances among others is driving this growth. When in fact, what really has to drive this growth more, again, it's more a question of proportion. It's really domestic growth. It's really rearing of a real middle class here in the Philippines. I know I can go on and on and on, but that's my point. Like, you go and watch a historical movie like that, you appreciate the effect it has on you. You appreciate the effort. So, kudos to director Joel Lamangan. At the same time, you also realize how profound is the problem. How profound is the problem. So the more I do this public education, with my humble means, just vlogging and writing and all of that. I mean, kasi, guys, as a columnist, as if you're on TV, I mean, of course, the elite listen to you, or at least the global elite in some sense, those who read and they bother. Okay, but the point is, at the end of the day, if you really want to go into, the fundamentals of the problem, there has to be concerted effort, and it cannot be done by one person or one school, etc. It has to be systematic, and this is where talagang, the more I think about it, the DepEd is super important here. The Department of Education is super important here. So, do we have the optimal team in charge of DepEd? Let's debate about that. But definitely, you cannot blame Sara Duterte for this very profound problem. I mean, a part of me is wondering what was happening in the past 30, 40 years in terms of making sure our folks get the right kind of, understanding of how democracy works, how effective governance works, what is the job of a president really? Hindi lang pwede pakit lang, hindi lang purong pwede tatay style bara-bara lang. It has to be something systematic. What is the role of political parties? Ngayon I hear all of this nonsense about, pag binalitan natin yung constitution natin, automatically papasok yung mga investors. It doesn't work that way. You see, Vietnam and China have extremely restrictive investment rules, and yet a lot of investors are coming in because there's so many other reasons that bring investors in, right? And I can cite countries totally similar systems, form of government, Turkey, Korea, France, and yet totally different trajectory in terms of their economic growth, etc. And then we can talk about, for instance, countries with very different political systems, and yet they're all successful in one way or another, no? So from Poland to Taiwan and Korea, and all the way to, let's say, more successful countries in Latin America in recent years, no? They have totally different forms of government, but they're attracting a lot of investment. They're attracting, like Mexico, for instance, is now attracting a lot of investment, not because it changed its constitution, because, people don't want to invest as much in China because of what's happening in the geopolitical realm, so they're coming to Mexico. So, you know what I'm saying? So, kung we inculcate a basic, proper understanding of how governance works, not advanced, but basically, but people won't fall for nonsense, claims and for charlatans and populists and demagogues and all of that. Yun lang. So, it's really worrying. So, I'm all for math and sciences and all of that. As I said, my first course was really in the pre-med course, right? So I'm all for math and sciences. It's fantastic. But math and sciences has to go hand in hand also with proper understanding of what is good active citizenship, what is a good leader, etc. Because the two have to work together. We need citizens who are complete, no? They can do their math and science, they can do their proper reading, writing, comprehension, and all of that. And let's be totally honest about it, mga kameta. Pag tinignan mo yung mga surveys ng World Bank, titignan mo yung mga iba't ibang surveys ng PISA and mga others, we have problems both in reading comprehension in English and also in math and sciences. So the two problems are, kasi dikit yan eh. Diba? You want people who have a well-rounded education. Diba? So if you go to Taiwan, for instance, they're not only good in math and sciences, they're extremely invested. I was based in Taiwan for a while as a visiting scholar, National Chengchi. People there are extremely invested, no? In their democracy, in their struggle for a better country, in their independence. I can go on and on. I can talk about South Korea. I can talk about Hong Kong even. I can talk about, many countries out there whereby they have an education system that really lifts off people, right? And allows them to have, to be really not only productive citizens, but, thinking citizens, active citizens, participatory citizens. Those are the things that we need. Okay mga kameta, marami na akong nasabing drama. Ang layo na parkingan natin, kailangan ko na pumunta doon. But I really felt na I had to share this with you mga kameta, because the more the more I think about this, the more I realize how deep the problem is. And as I said, I completely agree that we need reconciliation and truth. I completely agree. But it has to be a reconciliation truth based on accountability, based on just also recognition that we have to deal with our education system crisis. It's yun nga, hindi lang siya budget and all. Like, what is the content of our basic education? What are we doing? But at the same time, I'm not counting out yung efforts ng mga kaibigan natin, whether Xiao Chu or whether JC Punong Bayan, all of these people are really trying their best here to inculcate that basic respect for historical accuracy and truth, right? At the same time, we have to have a really systematic solution to this. Kaya na-appreciate ko yung sinasabi ni parang Leloy na mahalaga din na the legit scholars and all get also more invested in textbooks, because a lot of textbooks are coming out there and we don't know who are really overseeing these textbooks, right? Or what is their political agenda. So yung mga magagaling dyan ng mga historians, magaling dyan ng mga social scientists, magaling dyan ng mga scholars, they have to be more invested in the textbook publication. Hindi lang yung mga high-end publication in international university press or international publication, etc. Or, Penguin, etc. Yeah, I mean, that's great. Fantastic. I mean, kudos, for instance, to Maria Ressa. I think her latest book is Penguin books. Great. But really, we have to go also to textbooks. That's really where the real struggle will be. And that's where a lot of focus has to be concentrated. Alright mga kameta, balikan ko kaya. Kanina ko pa sinasabi, alright, pero parang parati tayong nag-iisip ng bago eh. So I'll keep it there. Please watch yung mga sinasabi natin here. Leave your comments, leave your suggestion. Add na natin yan. Please subscribe to my channel. And also, please follow us. Comments, everything. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. Tell us your stories. Tell us your ideas. Because I'm also here to learn as much as I'm here to share. Okay? Maraming salamat. Thank you very much. God bless.